Section 10.2, Simplifying Radical Expressions. Our essential question says, how do you multiply radicals? So our vocab word says product property of square roots. So the product property of square roots says that the square root of a times the square root of b equals the square root of a times b. So the product means to multiply. So if you multiply together two separate square roots, you can instead combine them into one square root and multiply the numbers that were underneath each root together to make them one square root. Our first example is a review. It says write in simplest radical form, and it's the square root of 500. So I would like you to remember we've got the list of the first 12 perfect squares in red at the top. We are looking for the biggest perfect square factor of 500. So in that list of perfect squares, the biggest one that is a factor of 500 is 100. So I am going to split 500 into 100 times 5. The square root of 100 is 10. So in simplest radical form, the square root of 500 is 10 times the square root of 5. Remember, the reason that we want to learn simplest radical form is to keep our answer exact, so that we are not rounding our answer at all. The next one is the square root of 18. The square root of 18 is equal to the square root of 9 times the square root of 2. The square root of 9 simplifies to 3, so 3 times the square root of 2. Our next example, notice we have a 7 out in front of the square root of 50. I'm going to simplify the square root of 50. 50 is the same as 25 times 2. Then 25, the square root of 25 is 5. So I need to multiply together 7 times 5, which gives me 35 times the square root of 2 for my simplest radical form. And my next one, 147 is 49 times 3. 49 times 3. So now I have 3 times the square root of 49, which is 7, times the square root of 3. 3 times 7 is 21. So 21 times the square root of 3. All right, this next problem looks a little bit different than the last. The square root of 12 times the square root of 3. When you have two separate square roots and neither one of them are perfect squares, you actually want to multiply them together and take a better look at it. So 12 times 3 is 36. The square root of 36 simplifies, it's 6. So looking at those square roots separately, you may have thought that they didn't simplify, but once you multiply them together, you actually got a perfect square on that one. Okay, my next one, square root of 2 times square root of 24. If I put those together, 2 times 24 is 48. Now 48 is not a perfect square. It does, however, simplify because it's equal to 16 times 3. So breaking down the 48 into a different set of factors does simplify. The square root of 16 is 4. So in simplest radical form, it is 4 times the square root of 3. Our next example, you notice that we have some numbers in front of each square root. So on this example, I want to remind you of a property that we've learned earlier in the year called the commutative property. The commutative property says that you can change the order of what you are multiplying. So what I'm going to do is I am going to change the order like this. 2 times 8 is 16, and then underneath the square roots, 10 times 5 is 50. Now I can simplify this. The square root of 50 breaks down into 25 times 2. So 16 times the square root of 25 is 5 times the square root of 2. 16 times 5 is 80. So simplest radical form would be 80 times the square root of 2. So what I did was I used the commutative property. And I kind of regrouped it. I multiplied together 2 times 8, which was 16, and then I multiplied together 10 times 5 under the roots to get the square root of 50. And then I simplified it. So on this next one, it should be a little shorter process. I can multiply together 7 times 3, which is 21, and then multiply 3 times 24, which is 72. So 21 times the square root of 72. 72 simplifies into 36 times 2. The square root of 36 is 6. So 21 times 6 is 126 times the square root of 2 in simplest radical form. So the numbers in front of the square roots get multiplied together, the numbers underneath the square roots get multiplied together, and then simplify it. Look for the biggest perfect square factor and simplify. You should be able to write a summary now, answering your essential question. Please use complete sentences.